Hi, everybody. This is Alan Petersen with Meet the Thriller Author, and I'm excited to be welcoming the legendary bestselling author, James Grady. He's the author of 6 Days of the Condor, which, of course, became the classic film 3 Days of the Condor, starring Robert Redford and Faye Dunaway. He has a brand new thriller novel coming out calling Shadows on Sidewalks. Comes out May 5th. So very excited to talk to James about his incredible career and his new book that's coming out. Welcome to the podcast, Jim.
Thanks for having me, Alan. I really appreciate this. And thanks to everyone out there who's listening to us. You know, we enjoy being able to talk about this great feeling we get being working in thrillers.
Yes, yeah, my favorite subject matter. So this is always fun for me, especially to meet all the great authors out there. It's a lot of fun.
Well, we like to meet you too.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, thank you. So after before we get going here, I was kind of amazed. I was doing the research before talking to you, and I didn't realize this, but you sold 6 Days of the Condor at just 24 years old, and by the time the movie came out, you were what, like 26 or something, or
hi.
25. What did that do with your head?
Oh,
Did it freak you out? Were you chill?
it was I I had to work really hard to just keep being my small town Montana kid that I was. Wait a minute. I'm talking to Robert Redford. Wait a minute. I'm in New York. I mean, Max von Sydow is bringing me a piece of his birthday cake. I mean, that I knew it would be really easy to destroy the great luck I had. And so I just burrowed in. I kept a fellowship I had for the US Senate, and I tried not to let really myself or anybody focus on, oh my God, I was like a movie that happened. You know, the small town kid who gets to be the creator of a major movie. That's a movie in and of itself. And I didn't want to, I didn't want to turn that into a tragedy.
So you continued. So it was a while before you started doing writing full time, or were you still working as a journalist for a while?
Well, when I finished the fellowship, I was, Condor was still about to come out, and I had one book come out under a pseudonym, which annoyed me. But I didn't know enough in 1974 and 75 to say no to what I thought were bad editorial ideas. And I'm sitting in my apartment, literally just days after leaving the fellowship, and I get a phone call from one of my University of Montana buddies who says, Jim, I'm working for Jack Anderson's column, which at that time was in, this is hard to believe, 1,000 daily newspapers.
Wow.
Imagining America with 1,000 newspapers of any kind is hard today. But he said, look, all the interns that we have now don't know what to do after they pick up the phone and say hello. Could you come in and just kind of be my backup because everybody else is all out across the globe reporting? And I thought, sure, I'll go in for a couple, 3 months. And I ended up staying there 4 years because getting to be a muckraker was, I thought, one of the second biggest pieces of luck I had, because we all need to know as much about the truth as we can. And I got to help reveal some of that.
Yeah, that was like in the 70s. That was like the mist of Watergate and all that time era.
It was to be in, I was still on the fellowship in the last days of Watergate, but I stepped out in the hall and I could literally see rumors going down the hall.
Wow.
Uh, some people, that senator's aide would walk across to another Senate aide from another senator. They would talk, then he would go, and it was like astonishing. So yeah, I might be one of the luckiest authors you get to interview here.
Yeah, was that something when you were doing that job? Were you thinking like, oh, this would be a great fiction book, or you just focus on what you were doing?
I kept thinking, how in the world could you write fiction that anyone would believe about what was going on about Watergate. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the president ordering an assassination of a journalist, that really is not something anybody ever thought of. I mean, turns out, we were lucky it got called off, but I knew the guys who were. I later met the guys who were going to kill my boss, Jack Anderson,
Oh,
and they
wow.
they insisted that they were going to do it. But here's a secret I'll reveal to you and our listeners. I think a couple of them thought it was a terrible idea, so they kept coming up with really absurd assassination plans when all they really would have needed to do was walk up to him in a parking garage and make it look like a mugging. But
Mhm.
no, they had all these amazing, wild plans. And I think the bad guys knew there was a line they shouldn't cross.
Oh yeah, so doing that like to like discourage it or to waste time. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, yeah. So I was asking that too. Now, so your book, Shadows on Sidewalks. I've been reading it. I've been enjoying it so much. And I was it's the parallels with your own life is pretty similar because it follows James Traven who returns to his small town in Montana, and he's a writer just like you. Is there a little bit of him in this James?
Yes. And that was really when I realized I wanted to move thriller fiction, and which has always been great in non-urban settings. When I realized I wanted to get away from the Los Angeles, New York, Washington D.C. Fiction swirl, because our readers deserve more.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, why don't you go back to oh wait, why don't you go back to the small hometown that's like where you grew up? And if you're going to do that, why don't you make a guy who's a little bit like you? And that allowed me to reveal a number of things. And it also, I have to tell you, while it's not autobiographical, uh, you get this kind of wondrous feeling when you walk upstairs to your tiny loft office to write Shadows on Sidewalks, and you go, hey, that's what I would have done if I'd have been in his shoes. So yeah, it's a little bit like me, but that makes it all the more reality based, even though the thriller fiction is really wild.
Did you go back to your home state to do research, or you did it from memory?
I used to go back to my small hometown at least once a year.
Uh,
And when COVID hit and a couple other issues, including the costs of getting on an airplane these days,
mhm.
uh, when they became important, I haven't gone back like I normally would have, and like I kind of want to. But there's this. I had a great teacher named Richard Hugo, who's a very famous poet, ran the Yale University Young Poet Society from Montana, which I never understood how he did that. But he one day said, there's certain places, certain geographies that have a strong gravitas that if you're from them, they're never going to leave you. And he went around this seminar and got kids to say, "Oh yeah, I'm from New York." Da 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 da. And he got all the way around. I was the second to the last one. And he said, "And where are you from?" And I said, "Well, Shelby, Montana." And he leaned across the table and says, "You know what the fuck I'm talking about."
Mhm.
And he's right. My hometown has a power to it that stays with me to this day. And to be able to write a fictional version of it, I felt like I owed that to the people who raised me, to the country that let me become who I was, and to the future generations who, and they may not have a good glimpse of the yesterdays of their parents and our audience today.
Yeah, that's really struck with the book too, because my father grew up in a small town in Minnesota, and so
Wow.
I remember it's very similar when I was reading this to. It reminded me of my dad's home state and his little small town, all the dynamics and the small town, at the coffee shop, at the restaurant, they're all having their breakfast there, all the old timers, and it's great reading that.
Yeah, it was, and it was great to go back and show that. You
Hmm.
know, while I show corruption and evil and violence, I was also able to show the amazing kindness and selflessness, not selfish um, efforts that people in small towns and really also, I would argue, in the big cities of America show their neighbors and friends and even total strangers.
Hmm.
And I think that we, in this era of wow, exploding news every 15 minutes and the fears that we all have of everything from global climate change to, terrorists and gang activity. I think it's really important for us to reclaim the sense of community and kinship with our neighbors that helped us get to where we are now.
So can you tell us a little bit then about the plot of Shadows on Sidewalks for the listeners, and how you got the idea to write this book?
Sure. Um, well, I knew that I wanted to have a astonishing plot that I had never seen in any mystery, in any thriller, or really, frankly, in any of the what do they call them, mainstream literature, like Steinbeck, who's one of my heroes. So I came up with a plot where our hero, James Traven, is given a choice. He can either have an affair with the rich man's wife, or he can leave her to the mercies of her husband, who might just murder her. And the whole reason he's created the villain has created this plot is because he needs to have a very public reason to be divorced from his wife, that his mother, the billionaire matriarch of the town, will buy and not cut him out of her will. So he comes up with a really, in a way, kind of simple plot to have this famous author who's back in town for just a little while have an affair with his wife, who the two of them have never met. And our heroine, Lana, tells our heroine, tells our hero James, look, if you don't do this, if we don't do this, I'm going to probably be murdered. And the only person they can trust, this is one of my favorite characters I ever created, is a man named Cody who runs the local gun shop. And he's an quote ex-Marine, quote, but he keeps ghosting from the small town to go off on missions that nobody knows about and he never talks about. So that's a little something that is me, again, touching that covert world of spies and espionage and thrillers that help me get to where I am today. So really, this is, Shadows on Sidewalks is about the choices we all have to make. It's, an erotic noir novel. There's a great quote that inspired this from Nobel Prize winner Bob Dylan, who says, and I may get the wording slightly off. He says, "Sex and murder and politics is the way to go if you want to get people's attention." And he's right. So I used those that Bob Dylan quote and those parameters to create this novel set in our today's. Really, it's set where all of us are facing political choices and moral, social, and personal choices that we need to move forward on. We are all shadows on sidewalks, which is the key to the title of our book. And Shadows on Sidewalks is SOS, the universal sign for help me, please.
Mhm.
And I wanted that to be something that the readers could see, because that way they'd know I'm writing about all of us. I'm not writing about James Traven or James Grady. I'm writing about, you know, I'm writing about you, Alan,
Mhm.
and everybody out there who's listening to us.
Yeah, I think that's what makes your character so great too, because you make it really relatable. Like, I mean, like even in 6 Days of the Condor, yeah, the protagonist was a CIA guy, but it was like he was like a book nerd.
I no, I was came of age in the James Bond era, and while I loved the books and at least three-quarters of the movies, I never knew anybody who do anything like James Bond, shoot a villain from 1,000 yards away while driving a fast sports car and picking up, Ursula Andress alongside the road, and she'd fall for him immediately. Wow. While we all aspired to that, none of us none of us are like that. And when I created Condor, I said, look, I can't let Condor do anything that I can't do. And he, in fact, has to do them all not as well as my buddies and I could. And that brought the thriller genre back into our listeners' worlds. And I was lucky that publishing and movies decided that was a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's a great era with your book and Marathon Man and all those other ones that came out during that time. It's a very
Oh,
I love
yeah.
those books and
Oh,
movies.
and when you look at Marathon Man, which also was a pretty great book, but it was again somebody who is just an ordinary striving citizen who gets, in a way, trapped
Mhm.
by the conspiracies of other people around him, and then has to figure out, how the hell am I going to survive? And I love the idea that him being a runner was absolutely crucial to the plot and the character.
Yeah, and the main torture scene is a sadistic dentist too,
Oh
which
my
we all can
God.
relate to.
Oh, oh, all of us have been in a dentist chair where suddenly what we thought was going to be, a mildly annoying, routine appointment becomes terrifyingly painful. I just
Mhm.
had major dental surgery and I'm flashing back now to PTSD. But yeah, Marathon Man, and it was such a brilliant villain.
Mhm.
Oh, anyway, I, you know,
Yeah.
I love, we could talk about other people's work all day long.
It's amazing too. When I was reading the Shadows on Sidewalks, I wanted to ask about this because there's a key moment in the book, and whether I don't think it's giving away anything in the plot, but it involves an ice raid in Montana, and I'm assuming you wrote this a couple of years ago or a year ago before ice was on the news, especially Minneapolis. What? uh, What's your take on that? Like you write about something and then all of a sudden it's in the news. Is that kind of weird or?
That the rise of ICE and what happened in Minneapolis and hundreds of other cities across America and small towns even
Mhm.
blew my mind, because I thought I had created the extreme of what might happen. I didn't realize that what I was writing would become a new normal for too many of us. And when that started to happen, I I remember I was supposed to talk about it with journalists like you, and I just couldn't. I just couldn't.
Mhm.
I can now, but wow, where we are now with law enforcement officials wearing black masks and coming through my neighborhood in vans carrying assault rifles. I mean, I spent a lot of time as an author writing with street cops and
Mhm.
homicide cops and vice cops, and I I really was so impressed by those guys. And they, even the ones who were crazy or wacky or, really not too good at their job, they came out every day with their faces in full view to help ordinary citizens be safe.
Mhm.
I'm afraid that we're moving to a whole new era now.
Yeah. That's kind of frightening. And that was kind of ask you too, like, is that something that when you see political thrillers reflection of society, is that like something that is do we enjoy these type of books too because it's a way for us to explore our fears before they emerge in real life, or I don't know
Well,
your thoughts about that.
I think that that's a great question, but unfortunately, contemporary literature, life moves so fast now that if I am going to be writing about a political scandal or a political change in how we all live, it'll probably be the distant past before
Mhm.
I can even get the pages to my editor. It's really difficult. And I actually, George Pelecanos and I don't know if you know who George is.
Oh
He's
yeah.
a phenomenal writer. And he was, between us and all your listeners, George was the heart and soul of The Wire. He was just a great, he's a great producer and writer. And we were talking about how difficult it is for young authors today to step into the field of, literature, because the world around them is changing so fast. They, they can't write fast enough and publish fast enough to learn how. George and I learned how by publishing. Now, I really don't know what the future of literature is gonna be like. And I say this with another thriller in the works.
Mhm.
Uh, but it's almost like we have to be a camera and podcaster at the same time now.
Yeah.
And let's hope our readers can enjoy that.
Yeah. I was also wondering too because I read in your bio too that you were telling stories as a young boy to your mother. So you've always been kind of a storyteller. Did you enjoy thrillers as and suspense novels as a is that why you started to write these? How did I get it?
Oh, there was, in the county library where I would go to get books, there was a nook that was mystery and thrillers. And I probably spent more time there than any. I would get in there, and when I was young, like 10, some of the librarians didn't want me to go back there because there were books with sex in them and books with murder in them and books with, maybe this kid shouldn't be reading them. So I had to wait, sneak in, and I remember I couldn't reach the books on the top shelf. And one of them was the collected novels of Dashiell Hammett. And I couldn't figure out what a Dashiell Hammett was. And my parents, who were nervous in the that era because of McCarthy's attacks on Hammett and J. Edgar Hoover's too, they, oh no, you'd be bored by that, whatever, da 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 da. So one day when I'm a teenager, I thought, hey, I can reach it, and I pull it down, and I'm looking, holy shit, The Thin Man, The Maltese Falcon. These are two great movies I loved. What would the book be like? I had to check it out and hide it in my high school locker, so my parents didn't know I was reading.
Oh wow, like it's like a dirty book or something, huh?
Oh yeah, but I read, Donald Westlake and Ed McBain and Christie and Nero Wolfe, and it just goes on, and I would thrill when they would get a new book there. And it would just, I loved mysteries and thrillers from the day I was able to read them. And I think it's because I could understand. We thriller writers, we want the readers to understand what we're talking about, no matter how complex, no matter how convoluted, no matter how giant thematic it is. We've got to let you understand, and we've got to intrigue you to go to the next sentence.
Mhm.
And wow, I loved that. I knew that was what I was going to do when I grew up.
I want to ask you too now about like your writing process. That's something I always ask my guests here. So, do you? I'm sure you get this asked a lot. Are you an outliner? Do you like go by the seat of your pants? What's your process like?
Well, the thing that I realize is that every book creates its own rules on how you're going to do it. I have written like 40-page outlines that I follow completely. And I've started others books with like no more than a notion and a first line. And then I also have like major senses of what's got to happen. So I have a small outline in my head. But the great moment, and I think every author that you interview will talk about, is that moment you're up there, you're writing this great plot, you know exactly where it's going, and then the character name, in my case, James Traven, goes, "Hey, that's not what I would do." And the next thing you know, the characters you're writing about take over the book. And you at some point you it's almost like you're taking dictation and cleaning up them, making them far more verbose than they would be. But it's no, it's the writing process is always decided by the book you're writing. And I think that that's something that anyone who's an aspiring author in our listeners now should embrace, because that relieves them of the 440 books about how to write a novel that go boom, 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 boom. Well, no, let your book come out of you and let it take over. And that's what I do. I tend to work in the mornings because by the time afternoon the grocery list is bigger. My daughter is called with an issue. My son stopped by. Wait, was that a car wreck in the street below me? I try to get up early, get through the papers as quickly as I can, and my light breakfast. Often mornings I would do. I still do a walk and or taiji, which I've been doing now for shit almost 5 decades.
Oh wow! So way before it got really popular.
Oh yeah, and I got my first instructor was a CIA an analyst who'd been taught by the Chinese in Taiwan.
Oh
So
wow!
I have a great lineage, as they say. But it's like that moment when I turn on my computer and I fall into it. And I'm never quite sure where I'm going to end up. But here's another trick. And I learned this from both Elmore Leonard and I think Hemingway talked about this too. You always end with a sentence that you know what the next one is going to be, so that when you get up and you start writing again, you already kind of know where you're going to start, and
Hmm.
that relieves a lot of pressure and gets you going faster.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, because you're not sitting like staring or wondering what to go next. You're like actually gonna probably chopping at the bits to get back to it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and that's great for the readers.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you it's just it's a great process.
And it's just like curiosity, what do you used to write? Is this just like Word or something else or
I'm still on Word.
yeah. Mhm.
You know, I I know there are probably advanced programs for writing, but why? I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up I grew up having to use a manual typewriter where you'd have to click, do every line. And now Word makes that so much easier. And I think if you focus too much on the technology of what you're doing, what you're really doing is moving away from your task or your objective here. Because you're, oh, the technology wants me to do this or that, or and I'm not. No, I want the technology to put me in the driver's seat, and then I don't care how old my car is.
Yeah. I was kind of curious too, because you sustain a writing career across really now multiple generations of readers. So what do you think has been your longevity in this genre, which is, it's a tough business, and you've been at it for what, almost 50 years now?
Wow. Yeah, I think that what me that keeps writers like me and Jeff Deaver and Stephen King going is that we don't do the same book over and over and over. We and okay, now I'll only speak for myself. I want to write a book about something that my readers today care about. And I want to give them characters who they might look across the cafe and see when they're picking up their cup of coffee. You want to keep your life going and not get stuck on the past, and you certainly don't want to copycat anybody or yourself.
Mhm.
I could probably write three different versions of 6 Days of the Condor. Why would I want to do that? And why would any of my readers want to read that? I mean, yeah, I could argue it'd be thrilling, but no, let's give them something new and interesting to take forward into their daily lives today.
Yeah, and that's one of the questions that I always ask my guests before I let them go is because I do have aspiring writers that listen to this podcast. Any advice for somebody who's thinking about writing one of these books?
Start now. That's it's I've gone to writers conferences or been asked to come and be on panels, and I know people in the audience, they're coming to get answers or whatever, and I want to, and I usually look out and I say, look, thank you for coming. Go home
Mhm.
tomorrow morning. Start your book. I don't care if you haven't figured it all out. Work on it. I mean, this is like, you have to start now. You have to be true to yourself, and you have to be true to the story you want to tell, and you cannot, under any circumstances, try to con your readers and not be respectful of them. But the way to learn how is to start now.
All right, that's great advice. And so, what are you working on next? You said you're working on another thriller now. Um,
I figured out that one way to get over the the great problem we've talked about of contemporary literature changing so much. I wrote a novel set, yeah, I'm writing a novel set in April 2026. When I started it, the world was one thing. The world now has completely changed. But what I came up with the idea was that when I finish the fiction, I go back and put in the historical events that the characters were going through. So it is so while it's set in the second week of April of 2026, last week,
mhm.
I started it in February. And then just we got to this second week of April, and I could never have imagined that world 2 months ago. And now I've created or I'm I'm still about three-quarters of the way through it and have a quarter more to go. But I've created a plot and a world that the readers will remember. And it's like I'm writing about their yesterday in a way that helps them look at their today and maybe their tomorrow. And I think I figured out this technique, but we'll see. And I'm calling it the promised land.
Oh,
Is where we all, we grew up hoping that we're believing that we're in the promised land and that it's going to get better. So let's hope I can pull it off and come back when the book comes out to you.
yeah, yes, absolutely. I'd love to have to for you to be back for that one. So yeah, and so Shadows. I want to show the Shadows on Sidewalks. Been such a great book, and the reviews have been amazing. I've been reading so many reviews. Wow.
It's like,
I mean, you must be used to that, though.
well, but these have been really great. And it's like I remember when the Publishers Weekly and the Library Journal reviews
Yeah.
came, I, I'm looking at my computer screen and I said, okay, I'm done for the day. I,
You want to
I
stop at a
went,
high.
I went and told my wife, here's the review, but I'm done for the day. Maybe we'll go out and have dinner instead of, cooking something in the kitchen. But I was so lucky and they got it. That meant so much to me that readers will be able to get it. And what more could any author ask?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jim, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone out there listening. I hope you have a great day today and an even better tomorrow.